Hello. Today I'm covering the case study, The Effect of Blended Learning in a Mathematics Course. Some context and who the participants were in this study. This is over a secondary mathematics course, specifically 7th grade, so the students were about 12 to 13 years old. There were two separate classes being evaluated here. I'll kind of break those down in a moment. One was the blended learning environment, which was the experimental group, and then the other was a traditional face-to-face um, control group. And this study took place in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. Hopefully I did not butcher that name. So the article set out to or I guess test a number of hypotheses. The two most important ones are the top two here. So this was to test the hypothesis that experimental or blended learning can enhance academic achievement in mathematics, and the other was to assess student attitudes towards mathematics. Some other things that the case study intended to solve was whether or not gender plays a role in academic achievement or attitudes towards math, or whether or not ability plays a role in achievement or attitude. I will not be covering those for the sake of this assignment, but if you're interested in that, you can take a look. So the steps in terms of incorporation here, so they used the learning management system called Moodle. Many of you have probably heard of it or maybe even used it yourself. Basically, the instructional courses or activities were all online through this website, and there were links to additional websites, digital learning materials, and even homemade videos by the teacher included in the course. Students worked on fixed schedules, meaning that they needed to upload homework or activities to a specified location at a specified time. Additionally, there was an area provided for students to submit work, join discussions, and share opinions, kind of like a lounge area. Students were able to kind of share ideas to one another in this lounge area, and it created more classroom environment. There was also a separate area for tests and drills for assessment. As far as implementation goes, students took 5 mathematics courses over the course of 8 months, meaning they took 5 mathematics courses each week over the course of 8 months, meaning that essentially if a student was working at the intended pace, they were completing one course every day. Students worked in the computer lab, so outside of a traditional classroom but still within the brick and mortar school. There was a pre/post test combined with monthly benchmark tests to evaluate. Teachers would provide learning materials based on the student responses, essentially meaning that as the course went on, teachers were able to adapt the materials in the coursework based on how students were scoring. And again, like I mentioned before, there was a control group, and this control group was doing traditional face-to-face education. So once the course was over, you could see here the pre-test scores were similar between the two groups. However, the post-test scores ended up being much higher with the experimental or blended group. I'm not going to go into this figure too much, but if you want to take a close look at it, you can. I'll leave it on the screen for a few seconds. Without context, that is a pretty difficult figure to decipher, but the big pull away there was that the experimental group did in fact maintain higher achievement overall than the traditional group. Additionally, and this wasn't mentioned in the previous figure, but students did have ultimately higher positive attitudes than the traditional group towards the mathematics. And this is a quote directly pulled from one of the surveys conducted near the end. The majority of the students, 89%, commented in their responses that such an approach facilitated their learning for various reasons, such as the layout of the content, the quality of the examples, and the online tests. The content provided is short and concise, making it easier to learn. So my analysis here, self-paced work in math seems very beneficial. I don't know if this would work outside of math, but it seems like if any course is going to do it, math is kind of where it should be. This was a deployment of the flex model. So students were working in the school with a teacher on site. Students were working in a lab outside of a traditional classroom at their own pace. And individual students' needs were met, meaning that the course was meeting the students where they were to facilitate the learning. Something to really consider here is that professional development is absolutely needed for this. The teacher was prepared and supported by the school, but in a situation where that's not the case, I can't possibly imagine this model working. So could this work in other subjects? I don't know. I'm a history and English teacher. I have a hard time giving up total autonomy to students, in self-paced asynchronous work in these subjects. They're too highly dependent on discussion. And this could this work in high school? Again, not sure. I do believe that mathematics is kind of like the key here to work for self-paced, but I am interested in discovering this further. Thank you very much for your time. Here are my resources if you want to take a closer look at where I got the information. The top source is the case study.